So this is why I think that Jake Paul KOs KSI in a potential matchup that may be happening at the end of this year. So obviously KSI seems to be getting closer and closer to that Jake Paul fight. He keeps calling for it, you know what I mean? Every win he says, Jake Paul, Jake Paul, Jake Paul. Can't keep the name out of his mouth. Um, and obviously that's been a rivalry for a long time, since about 2018 when KSI called out Jake Paul after he beat Joe Weller. He called out both the Paul brothers, and it's been a rivalry for a while, and obviously there's a debate on it because KSI is continuing to win, and his last win against FaZe Temple was a pretty solid win. But here's my thing. I think that these KSI fans, and me personally, I am a KSI fan. I've been watching KSI and the Sidemen for a very long time. But these KSI fans who think he's going to win and they cope, it's ridiculous. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think from what we know, from what we've seen of the two of them, I think Jake Paul puts him stiff, or at least, pretty badly TKOs him. I really don't see KSI having any chance to win that potential matchup, to be honest. And I'll just give a breakdown of why. So Jake Paul has been very active since coming back to the scene, and since starting that pro journey. He fought Gibb, you know what I mean? He's had 6 fights professional, and he's won every one of them, and a lot of them by KO, all but one, which was the first Tyron Woodley fight. But then he avenged that. He KO'd Tyron Woodley viciously in the rematch and got that KO over Woodley. He's beaten Anderson Silva, you know what I mean? Convincingly beat Anderson Silva by decision, including dropping him in the last round of the fight. So it's just, he's just faced way better opposition, and he's been looking. Here's my thing: Jake Paul has looked better against better competition than KSI has looked against much worse competition. So Jake is fighting the much higher level guys. I know Anderson Silva's old, you know what I mean? I know Tyron Woodley hadn't won a fight in the UFC for a long time, but ultimately they're credentialed. I know Tyron Woodley is a bit of a wrestler with an overhand right. Like, I understand that fully. I do. However, he'd been striking for a lot longer than Jake, and striking in a professional striking art. He had a pretty heavy striking battle with Wonderboy, one of the best strikers in the world. You know what I mean? Obviously he implemented wrestling, but he dropped Wonderboy. You know what I mean? He's had a lot of success in MMA with his hands, and Jake beat him, and Jake beat him convincingly. You know what I mean? The first time I thought he convincingly won that fight. I know that there was weird controversy, but I thought he convincingly won that fight. And then the second fight, he KO'd him viciously. You know what I mean? Then he fought Anderson Silva. I know Anderson Silva is old, I understand that, but he'd been beating former champions in boxing, like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And, for Jake Paul to go out there and beat him decisively over the full course of the fight looks even better for me. I think Jake Paul is only getting better, right? His cardio seems to have improved. He seems to have that grit. Obviously, Tyron Woodley managed to rock him, but he fought through it. He fights through tiredness. He's got big power, and I think he's got the better skills at the moment. KSI, honestly, I wanted him to show me more against Temper. I thought he would look better against Temper, you know what I mean? But he got hit with a lot of straight punch counters. And if there's one thing Jake Paul's going to do to KSI, it's straight punch counters as he comes in. And I said in my prediction of the KSI Temper fight, I don't think Temper has the kind of power to deter KSI's pressure. Jake does. So I just think it's not a good matchup. Excuse the pun, it's a nightmare matchup for KSI. I just don't think it's a good matchup. I think he'll get countered coming in. He's sloppy with his defense when he enters. He has decent footwork, pivots, and like decent ways of getting inside and working the body inside. That's true. Jake does tend to get a bit tired. So I think he can have some success, but I just ultimately think he's going to get hit with that straight right. He's going to get hit with those big straight punches. Jake is going to counter the shit out of him when he's rushing forward, and Jake's just going to beat him. Jake's going to beat him up, and I just think it's a terrible idea for KSI to take the fight, you know what I mean? Like, I get that he KO'd Temper, but he got hit with a lot of shots against Temper. A lot of shots that if Jake's hitting him with, he's not taking them in that same way. Maybe he doesn't get KO'd, you know what I mean? But he's not taking them how he took them against Temper. I honestly think Jake Paul finishes him in a potential matchup at this stage, unless KSI can go out and fight like a Tyron Woodley and decisively beat Tyron Woodley. Even if he doesn't get the KO, just show that he can outbox him. Maybe I'll change my mind, but at this stage, I think Jake Paul just counters him and obliterates him with that right hand. And you know what? If he doesn't finish him, I do understand KSI is reasonably tough. Maybe I think Jake at least drops him though. I think Jake wins. I think it's going to be a KO, but if it's a decision, I think Jake at least drops him. You know what I mean? And I don't see how KSI wins. You know what I mean? Jake's shown he can take a punch to some degree. You know what I mean? Obviously against a smaller guy in Woodley, but he took punches against Anderson Silva. I just don't know how KSI gets it done. I think he's probably the worst boxer. He has certain things he's good at. He's got good footwork. Jake's footwork is pretty lacking, but I just think generally Jake is better. And I think he will KO KSI. So that's just a little breakdown of that. I know the fight's not happening yet, but I just wanted to give my thoughts on it as KSI keeps calling for it. And as a fan of him, seeing as his whole thing is legacy, I really don't want to see him take that fight. Yeah, that's about it. See ya.